Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Every once in a while I do video game commentary on things outside of the wargaming and strategy gaming space, and today is one of those days. I'm going to be talking about Steam ending Greenlight, but first I do want to say that the footage you see in front of you is World of Warships. I know I use that from time to time as sort of a general filler for games when I want to talk about a topic unrelated to any specific game. So again, if you're looking at the footage here, it's from World of Warships. Now, the topic today is inspired by a report that came out, I want to say about 2 days ago. I noticed it when I was scrolling through Steam, and it was an article on Polygon published by Ben Kirchera, who I'm not terribly familiar with, but this came out on February 10th. I've linked to the article in the description, and basically what it is talking about how Steam, which is the most popular digital distribution platform for computer games, Steam is ending a program they call Greenlight, which what Greenlight is a user how do you even describe Greenlight? Essentially, Steam is this distribution platform, this supermarket of video games. They have to figure out which games they're going to release or which games they're going to publish on their site. And for a long time, they were pretty strict about games that got on there. They had a relatively limited catalog, and games that got on there generally did really well because you had this large user base of gamers and this relatively small database of games. Steam curated very carefully. If you were a big major publisher, you got on there. If you were an indie game, it could be difficult to get in there. You had to apply. You had to hope that, Steam approved your game. I don't know all the detail of the process. I think there was you had to prove some attraction for the game, getting some success or previous success. It was difficult for indies to get on Steam. But if they were able to get on Steam, often they were able to see a lot more success than they otherwise would have. Not every game was a huge success. I think that's this mythology that's built up around Steam, is that every game that's on there has been successful, which is certainly not the case. But anyway, so they had this really tightly curated system. But what they realized was Steam is growing really fast. Our catalog of games is relatively small. Because it's so huge and growing really fast, we're getting thousands of submissions from game developers saying we wouldn't get on here, and Steam just didn't have the resources. They couldn't figure out, all right, how are we going to curate this? We don't want to put every game that asks to be on here. We don't want to be like the Google Play Store where something like 40% of the apps never even get downloaded once, and I made that stat up, but I know it's a large percent. It's actually larger than 40% from a few articles I read. But a large percentage of games never even get downloaded once, and there's a crap ton of crap out there. It's a mountain of shit. And how do gamers find, quality games? So they didn't want to become that, but they also didn't want to become, just 20 games, and I'm minimizing this, but they didn't want to become a store that had no inventory with a huge user base, because that'd be leaving money on the table, right? You've got millions and millions of users, and if you don't have the games they want to play, they may take their money elsewhere, or they just won't buy the game and you'll lose out on that revenue. So they wanted to figure out a way, how do we make the catalog bigger while at the same time providing some level of quality control for users? So the program that they launched was called Greenlight, and it was a crowdfunding type campaign where developers could put their game up on Greenlight and say, I'm trying to get on Steam, here's what I'm trying to do. Some games are already complete, so, here's some video or screenshots or, our ideas, our design. Here's what we want to do. Get us on Steam. And then users would come in and they'd vote. They'd say, this is a game I would definitely play and purchase if it was on Steam. Thumbs up, get it in there. Or they'd say, thumbs down. This game has no interest to me. I wouldn't play it. And based on those results, Steam would decide, okay, here are the games. Based on what our users have said they want to buy, we'll put these games in Steam. But what it ended up becoming was a basically rubber stamp for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games getting on Steam in a really, really short period of time. People were voting, maybe they were being compelled to vote, maybe somehow the votes were illegitimate, maybe it was just people were voting thumbs up to everything, whether they really had any intent to buy. So Steam had this massive influx in its inventory of games, and then you had the other problem. You had the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store problem, where you had this mountain of content, sometimes often very poor quality content. Steam didn't have the resources to really vet this to see, like, are any of these actually good games? Are these bringing value to us? So that a lot of their games, I'm sure, today, and this is the paradigm we exist under today, are not succeeding, or at least some of them. But on the flip side, like, people are voting and saying they want to buy these games, but they're not buying them. So, like, what does Steam need to do? Well, they probably don't want to go out and hire a whole bunch of people to say, like, let's play all of these games and have a rigorous curation system, because even so, they're getting so many submissions that's just not feasible. On the flip side, they don't want to go back to what they used to be, where they only had a few games coming out every now and then, because the audience is even bigger. Tens of millions of people use Steam. And you need to be able to provide games that they're going to enjoy and want in order to keep them engaged with the platform. If you limit yourself to a very small, select group of games, that's going to be very difficult to do. So, what apparently Steam is coming out with is a platform or a program called Steam Direct, which allows developers to bypass the need to get users to vote on their game and allows them to get directly onto Steam. The problem with it is it's predicated on a pay-for-access system. At least this is how it's been reported. Now, maybe Steam will have some level of curation, some, I don't know. Maybe someone will look at the game and make sure it's not a buggy mess. But as far as we know, Steam is going to charge. So the way Steam Direct is going to work is Steam is going to say, all right, developer, you want to get on Steam? That's fine. We'll let you on Steam. Just make out a $5,000 check to Valve. Once we get that money, your product will be listed on our page. Now, the amount is still up for debate. No one's quite sure. The rumors are it's going somewhere between $200 and $500 to get on Steam. So instead of individual users or people saying, I'll buy this game, put it on Steam, instead of Steam saying, we looked at this game and we really made sure it was a good quality game, it looked interesting, it was something that would provide value to our customers, instead of doing any of that, Steam is saying, pay us and you're in our system. That's not totally outrageous. A lot of publishers have done that in the past, pay for publishing. It's not a crazy or unheard of idea. Apple does charge a yearly maintenance fee to apps in order to stay on the App Store, I believe. But this idea of saying, all right, pay us and then we'll put you on our platform seems faulty for a few reasons. What it's really designed to do is to prevent people from putting out a crap game and getting it on Steam, false promises and other things like that where the developer doesn't deliver on, and just trying to kind of con people out of money. It's also likely just intended to dissuade people from submitting games in order to make sure that they're not getting this mountain of content that they're currently getting. And so I understand it, right? Steam needs to do something. But I think this is the wrong approach. And let me elaborate. If it's $5,000, first of all, if it's $200, who cares? It doesn't really make a difference. I don't think it'll stop anyone developing a half-finished game if it's just a couple $100. It won't really do anything. It'll make Steam a little bit of extra money, but it won't really make anybody's lives any better if it's $200, $300, $400, something really minimal. So if they set it too low, all it is a little bit of revenue for Steam, won't change the experience, who cares? If they set it at 1,000, 2,000, or even more, 3, 4, 5,000, then it might have an impact, especially if it's on the top end of that, 4,000 or 5,000. But I don't think it'll be a good impact. Yes, you'll cut out a lot of the crap, I'm sure. If you're a developer just looking to make a quick buck, you haven't put together a good game, it's a clone, it's a piece of shit, then fine, you're right. You'll probably remove that. The problem with the approach is you screw off a huge number of small developers who do build quality games, but are kind of one-man, two-man shows. Frankly, a lot of war games probably don't operate on a budget. That would just allow them to take a $5,000 expense up front. And as someone who plays war games and enjoys war games, I know they're a bit of a niche product. Now, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know what the sales figures are for Matrix games. I have no idea. None at all. But I have to imagine $5,000 is not an insignificant amount. Now, obviously, I'm sure if the game is a success, it won't matter. But add $5,000 to the budget of a team that is in many cases part-time and develops games for free. Or not for free, but for fun. They're interested in history. They're interested in anything. They just develop this game kind of in their basement. There's a lot of indie game developers out there who develop products with only a handful of people. I'm not even talking about war games. Some of them have been very successful. Super Meat Boy was a relatively small production. I think it was like 2 guys. And ended up becoming a huge success and a great game. And yet, I don't know what the result is if you put a $5,000 cost for them up front. Often these developers are using free engines, they're doing a lot of work, they're trying to figure out how to make a good product. And while not all of them are great, what I worry is this will limit the ability of a small independent developer to get out there, or it will make it less easy to be successful, but it won't really prevent a... I mean, again, if it's a small amount of money, it's not going to make a difference. But if you're telling someone who's a small indie developer, here's an extra $5,000 you have to pay. My real issue here is what it doesn't do is it doesn't do anything to the main developers, the AAA developers. Fine, whatever, they're probably going to release a relatively good product. But what it does is it tells all the small developers who are working hard on these side projects, doing these, labors of love, and I've played numerous games that are really good games. And I just worry if you put a $5,000 extra bill up there, all you're doing is you're penalizing the small guy. You're penalizing the little guy. There's no guarantee that the quality of the product will be any better. It's just an assumption. And what you're doing is you're hurting the developers who are already not succeeding because there's a mountain of crap out there that's blocking out the noise for their game, their app. There are a lot of pretty well put together games out there that I'm sure do not do well. I mean, just look. You dig through Steam. Find a game that had a lot of effort put into it. And you'll probably find a game that is buried and likely never sold well. And now you're putting an extra $5,000 cost on top of it. It just seems like a lazy way to curate. It has no emphasis on the quality of the game, the uniqueness of the game. It's literally just a tax to get on this platform that frankly should want more good quality games on there, should want more indie games on there, assuming they're of adequate quality. And so I worry that this won't really solve anything if it's on the low end, but if it's on the high end, all it's going to do is screw over a lot of the small game developers. And at least in my case, most of the games that I've played on Steam that have been crap have been like re-releases of like 30-year-old games from publishers that don't support their games anymore. And if they have a publisher, they're probably going to pay that fee. And now they're going to be getting highlighted because Joe Bob in his basement, who's developing this labor of love that many people would love if they ever played it, will never release his game because he just can't afford $5,000 up front for a passion project. That's kind of my fear. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this will all turn out great, but it just feels like a lazy approach for something that's not really going to solve the problem. What Steam needs to do is they need to figure out a better way to recommend games to people so that it fits their needs and their desires and their wants. It fits their, preferences. It needs to make games discoverable for people that it's relevant to. What it doesn't need to do is shake down small developers who already have enough challenges and roadblocks in their way to the first place, and now are being told to pay a exorbitant amount of money. I agree Steam needs to figure out a way to filter out bad games. I don't agree that this is the route to go. And I kind of am worried about the impact that this will have. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll leave it there. We'll see. I worry again about the impact this has on the wargaming industry, the strategy gaming industry. I've never had a horrible experience with a half-finished game. What I think would be an interesting approach, might be a better approach, would be for Steam to utilize the GMT model of the P500 system, where if you want a game to get on Steam, you've got to have a certain number of votes, but make people buy the game up front to see if it's actually going to be successful. So basically what you do is you put these games in sort of a provisional area in Steam, and you say, hey, if at least 500 people buy this game, and less than a certain percentage of people return it, which if you didn't know, on Steam you can buy a game and return it as long as you've played it less than 2 hours, then the game gets on Steam's main page. Make it, 500 is probably the wrong number, but this P500 system is developed by GMT Games, and basically it's in order to make sure that board games, so this is for the board game industry, in order to make sure that you don't publish and sell a board game that is not going to cover its costs, they have this P500 system where basically people pre-order it. And once 500 people pre-order, then they send a request to the publisher or the printer, who then prints the game and distributes it to the individuals. If it doesn't get to the 500, the game never gets published. And it might seem like, well, what about 400 people? You know, now they don't get this game. But the really neat thing about this structure is it makes sure that the game is able to be printed in a cost-effective manner so the developer can make a little bit of money, and the printer knows, okay, I'm not printing one at a time, because if you're printing one and then tomorrow you print one more and then 3 days later you print one more, if you're placing orders of one, you're going to have incredibly high costs. So what it allows it to do is you place an order to a publisher, they place an order to a printer, and you publish a set number of games in a large enough quantity where you drop the per unit cost due to economies of scale, and it makes it affordable for the user, it makes it economical for the game developer, and it's a way to curate what's going to get published because you actually buy the game up front. Something like that would be scaled appropriately for Steam might be an interesting approach to go. You know, if you get a publisher, you're in. Maybe Steam has some sort of internal curation system for indies where, you know, a select number of games are selected to be put in. And then the other games get this choice of, all right, well, we'll submit it to users. And when they submit the game, it has to be fully completed. If the individual purchases it, they get to play it. And if they don't like it, then they can obviously return it. Maybe give them a longer return window on these games. Maybe you give them 4 hours instead of 2. And then, you know, if your return rate is above a certain percent, you don't get onto the actual main page of the Steam. So you make this like a sub-page of Steam. And if you don't get enough purchases without returns within a certain period of time, you don't get on. If you do get enough purchases, then you do get on, and maybe you get featured on like the main page or something like that. I think that would be an interesting approach. Basically, you let people continue to support the Greenlight perspective, but you make them fork out some money up front. The developer's money is kind of held in escrow, essentially. And then you've got some sort of period of time where you have to hit this certain number of games sold without more than a certain number of returns. And if you meet it, you get on Steam because you prove you're going to be a profitable and worthwhile game. And if you don't make it, then the individuals get their money back. The game is removed from people's accounts, and you move forward. Or something like that. It'd be an interesting idea. Or maybe they don't get, I don't know if you don't want to, I think you want to give them their money back, right? Like if the game doesn't fully go on Steam. I suppose you could say you don't give them their money back and you just don't go on the main page. But you make this like a sub-page. You say like, all right, if you're interested in this game, go here, put your money where your mouth is, show that you're actually going to buy it. And then if you are, you know, then it gets you on Steam. It's an interesting idea, this kind of P500 approach that GMT uses for board games and applying it to computer games. I think that would be a more just and a more fair system than charging developers to get on Steam. Because then even an indie developer, you kind of get a little bit of a highlight because you're in this program, but it's on like a secondary page, so it's not the full main page highlight. And then if it's successful, then great. You didn't have to fork over a crazy amount of money. If it's not successful, you know, at least you had this avenue, this way to try and get in without being asked to spend a ton of money on a game that you probably, you know, you may not even make back. I kind of like that idea. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are below. I'm going to go ahead and end this video. Looking for tomorrow. I'm hoping to get some footage of Afghanistan 2011 up. I've got a preview copy of it, but just haven't had time to learn it. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts below. What should Steam do? Is the, you know, $200 to $5,000 fee to get on Steam appropriate? Would you do something different? What do you think about the P500 approach for computer games, adopting the board game approach? Let me know your thoughts below. And thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm out.
The ship is on fire.